There's guarded optimism about the global economy here at the World Economic Forum, but there's also a lot of concern about geopolitical instability and the effect that could have on all our fates economically and politically. One of the big issues over the past year has been the massive deterioration in relations between Russia and the West. And the Russians aren't very much in evidence here, but on Wednesday, the president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, was here, and he made a couple of very blatant appeals, firstly to the Western community, basically asking for more money and trying to negotiate a bigger IMF package to bail out the Ukrainian economy, but also saying that the Russian leadership, he said very bluntly in the hall, stop supplying arms, stop sending men into eastern Ukraine, calling out the Russian government essentially for fueling the conflict in eastern Ukraine, and that message was quite warmly received here. The other big political figure that I was very interested in watching here in Davos was General al-Sisi, the leader of Egypt. It was really his first big international speech, and it was very interesting to gauge the reaction to him, because after all, this is a man who was behind a military coup which led to a lot of bloodshed in Cairo, a lot of people imprisoned, and the overthrow of a democratically elected government. However, General al-Sisi has played the current mood, the concern about terrorism, particularly post the Paris killings, very skillfully. He stood up and he said that essentially that the people who demonstrated against the Muslim Brotherhood in Cairo were exactly the same sorts of people who demonstrated against terrorism in Paris. So he was painting himself as a bulwark against terrorism in the world. And to judge by the reception he got here, the Davos audience was quite receptive to that message. There was quite a lot of applause, even when he was introduced, admittedly by Egyptians, who I think had been quite carefully placed in the audience to give him a warm reception. But the questions that he was given were very soft, bordering on the sycophantic. The man interviewing him, former German minister Philip Rossler, applauded him for what he said was a visionary speech in Cairo in favor of religious tolerance, thanked him for his leadership, said the Davos community had welcomed him. So essentially this was Davos, the World Economic Forum, giving its benediction to General al-Sisi, saying essentially that we're not really going to talk about the military coup, we think you're a good guy and we're embracing you. And that, I think, is quite a significant development. The West faces a very difficult choice in the Middle East between very unpalatable alternatives. On the one hand, there's enormous concern about the jihadist threat, about terrorism. On the other hand, there was deep discomfort about reactionary, repressive, often brutal policies by anti-democratic regimes. Now that, in its most extreme form, is the choice in Syria, where the West has positioned itself as against both Assad and the jihadists, but it's also a choice faced in Egypt. And the reception of General al-Sisi here in Davos suggests to me that the West's concerns are now very much more focused on jihadism rather than on the threat of repression by reactionary anti-democratic regimes.